Hello and welcome back to coverage of the PDGA Euro Tour. We are here at the 8th stop, the Alutaguse Open in Estonia, and we are excited to be bringing you round 3 front 9 lead card MPO coverage, brought to you by MDG Media. The wind has returned a little bit here in round 3, but otherwise some great scoring conditions, and we're excited to be looking at the conclusion of this great tournament. I'm Connor Wood, and with me, Elias Luukkonen.
What is up, Connor? What is up, viewers? Very nice to be commentating on this final round action on one of the nicest courses we play all year. As we take a look at the players, Davidsson, phenomenal play throughout the first 2 rounds. He's leading the event. Player with some great backhand power, good forehand accuracy, and some good putting so far throughout the tournament.
Joining him, we have Nieminen, the forehand specialist, able to get that backhand out there as well when he needs to, but an incredible command and angle control with the forehand shots and really able to craft any line. Great player to have joining us.
And of course we got Tamm, possibly one of the furthest forehand plus backhand combos in the world as far as throwing distance. He has an opportunity to absolutely shred this course with that distance of his.
And rounding out our lead card, Mauri Villmann, having an incredible season so far, has gone on some stretches where he looks almost unbeatable, and he has worked his way here onto this lead card as he looks to extend his great performances towards the back half of this season. He's poised for a great finish here.
And we're gonna be starting off on hole 1 here. It's a long par 3, actually one of the more difficult par 3s to reach on the entire course. Playing at 129 meters, slightly uphill at the end. It's probably about 3, 4, even 5 meters uphill throughout the whole fairway. We're playing to the second basket further up on the hill to the left, OB long, and especially OB right. If you push your drive too straight, you're likely to end up in that OB.
Alutaguse Open, we have our lead card. It is 4:35 p.m. First on the tee pad, straight from Tampere, Finland. He's got -21. Representing Tasmania, Davidsson.
See Daniel here assume the tee, coming in as your leader here in this final round, has 3 strokes over his card mates who are each tied at 18 under. He's played phenomenally up until this point, and we'll see how he's feeling and playing on this final day.
And today this hole is actually a little bit easier to reach since we had a pretty strong right to left tailwind. So these hyzer shots are getting some extra distance. Although this one looks to be pretty heavy on the hyzer.
Next up, from Kuopio, Finland, currently at -18, representing dynamic disc, it's Nieminen.
I have to say I'm already very impressed with Jesse's performance on this course, as it is a very strong course for a backhand thrower, but there's not a lot of great forehand shots on this one. So Jesse is showing that he's able to utilize that backhand when he needs to, especially on some of these more open, longer holes, as he has a lot of distance on it.
Looking like a great pushing shape there. Important that you see him get a bit of flip up, and as he crashes the green, we see a great display of his backhand power there and accuracy. Great shot to get him started.
At -18 as well, from Tartu, Estonia, representing black ink discs and latitude 64. It's Tamm.
Albert here potentially has been driving the best out of this lead card so far throughout the first 2 rounds. But some unfortunate putting errors for him, especially in that round 2. He had multiple misses from circle 1. And that's something good to focus on today. Can he fix some of those putting errors? If he can, he has a great chance for the victory.
And you see with his power, he's able to go high and wide with a significant hyzer release, has a great distance on that, ends it just a little bit right of the pin, but a great one angle shape pushing up the hill. Good use of his power.
Representing Team Prodigy, can I get a round of applause to Mauri, Villmann?
Another Estonian here matching Albert. We have a split lead card here today between our Finnish and Estonian competitors. We'll see potentially some energy from that home crowd advantage, but a little bit of nerves here on the last day. Mauri Villmann, no stranger to lead card performances, getting his round started here.
Yeah, talking about crowd, this tournament, as it is pretty far from any big cities, there's actually very little crowd to speak of. Only few people following the lead card the whole way, and Mauri there with a nice hyzer shot to the edge of the circle. We're gonna have a couple of nerve testing putts on the start of this round to see where these players are as far as the nerves.
Daniel going uphill here. Gives it the height, but a tad too much width. He finds the cage off the right side. Albert going across the hill now.
From just outside the circle here. A nice height, but just not quite getting the line. Possibly that left to right when pushing it more to the right than Albert was expecting. And now, good chance for both Mauri and Jesse to pick up some strokes. Mauri from inside the circle here, and that is just in the middle. Perfect putt.
Definitely one of Mauri's strengths is on the green. Of course, also a great thrower, but when his putting is on, looks very effortless. We see Jesse now with the best drive of the group, and he is able to translate that as well into an early birdie here on hole 1.
It's definitely a nice birdie to get. It's not a super difficult hole, and especially for these players that have good distance on the backhand hyzer. It's a pretty basic shot, but with those OB lines and this final round pressure of a big Euro Tour event, somehow it becomes much more shallower, the area that you have to land the disc on. And as we saw, nobody really able to park the hole, even with this helping wind.
And just like that, we see 2 birdies and 2 pars, and it did in fact average just barely over at 3.04. So as you mentioned, a great birdie to get started and a good signal of the round to come, hopefully.
Yeah, I think that's gonna be a common theme today, as it was a bit more of a windier day compared to the usual, and the wind also coming from an unusual direction, stated by the locals here. We're moving on to hole 2 here. Pretty short par 4, only 180 meters. On the first shot you're trying to fly through this gap with a straight shot finishing to the right, somewhere down the hill to this open field that you see the players walking on right now. And hopefully, if you get a good drive, you're set up for a very simple approach. You can either go low through the gap or over the trees like the drone is flying. It's one of the more exposed greens on the course, so very likely to have a lot of wind on the putting green, especially comes into play with that elevated putt. Or the elevated basket, excuse me.
We see Jesse getting us started, playing that nice pushing hyzer as well. A good use of the overstability to push straight, but maintain some consistency, and he'll find himself on the edge of that banner on the slope. It will be awkward footing, but was able to hit that later gap.
Yeah, Jesse kind of airing out on the safe side. You rather want to push the forehand too far forward than to finish too far right, because as you see here, Mauri already contending with some trees on that right side of the fairway. And also if your forehand or any shot is very short to the right corner, you might even end up in that short right OB.
Daniel playing lower and wider as well, pushing that straight. He has found that tree line and likely quite obstructed unless he found some fortunate break out of there. Albert also some great power and control on the forehand. We see significantly more height here, as well as finding some flip up. And I think this is looks to be pushing far enough, but he is certainly in some trouble early into the right as well.
Is he though? Because I thought Albert just made it all the way to the field, but might be a little bit short there. We'll have to see that later. Daniel here, super tough spot, having to go with an understable fairway driver forehand. A shot that he is very comfortable with, and that's a nice result. Landing just inside the edge of the circle. What a nice throw from Daniel.
And Jesse here has the straight look, managed the width nicely, coming off the trees at the very end. Fortunate to align himself with an open look.
Going with that signature harp forehand of his. And it's a gap pretty well, but not the greatest speed control on the disc. Jesse is gonna have some work left to do. And Albert here luckily did stay out of the woods. Nice routine forehand approach from him. And that should be an easy birdie.
And ending on slightly to the right side does open up for just a pure hyzer approach rather than Jesse, who was required to flip one up to flat. A little bit touchier for both Mauri and Albert here on the right side. They can hold that one angle hyzer, and we see a great approach for Mauri as well. As we move to the green, we have Daniel just inside the circle with a soft tailwind from the flag's read.
Oh no, that's a pretty big air ball, and he's gonna have a tough putt coming back. This time going towards a headwind. Tough putt to get it up, and he does get it up. Unfortunately not center enough to stick it. And Daniel is gonna drop likely 2 strokes to everybody on the card if Jesse can make this from 9 meters.
As Jesse tries to find his birdie as well. You mentioned the gusts earlier on, Elias. This slightly elevated basket and some tricky wind conditions can really add that extra element of stress to these edge of circle 1 putts, that 8 to 12 meter range, feeling much harder in this sort of wind. As Jesse coming back now, looking to correct on a slightly shorter putt.
Another tough comebacker, but another important comebacker. And he has it in the middle. That's a clutch putt there. Still gonna gain 1 stroke on Daniel. But Albert and Mauri here both have a chance to gain 2 strokes. And we're not gonna have more than... If Albert can make this, we're not gonna have more than 1 stroke of difference between everybody on the lead card.
Just a little bit low there. He was unable to catch the chains cleanly. Sneaking over the cage, found a little bit of wobble, and unfortunately out to the side. As we see the difficulties of this green on hole 2, Mauri now stepping up. We'll see if he can break the seal here and find his birdie.
I think Mauri out of these players definitely has the best putting style for high wind situations, as he has a lot of spin and has that low delivery from the hip, just very direct, and that's a perfect putt there. He's gonna take a stroke on both Jesse and Albert and 2 strokes on Daniel.
Just like that. The seats change here in Alutaguse. Dramatic down to the very end. Albert with that straddle putt does still apply some spin, but not as much as, for example, Mauri or potentially Daniel. And we see those various styles, how they'll complement their play today.
we're moving on to one of the longest, actually the longest hole on the course, hole 3. It's a big par 5 of 318 meters. OB on the right side the whole way and also far on the left side. It's a pretty wide fairway, should not be missed, especially in today's conditions, because we had a nice strong tailwind on this hole. So the distance of 318 actually playing a little bit shorter with that tailwind. The first shot has to be on the fairway, and on your second, ideally you would love to get around all of these small pine trees, giving yourself an open approach to the green that has actually a great backstop on it. I wouldn't be too surprised if some of our players almost gave it a bit of a run on their approach, as the green is slanted upwards towards the backside OB. And even though that OB looks to be very close on the backside of the green, it's actually quite rare to see somebody ending up in that OB, as it is so far uphill behind the basket.
Great hole here, testing the controlled power of our competitors. We have Mauri now on the box. I think especially with some slight wind, all of these guys will be utilizing some good overstability, knowing that they can throw about 100 each throw and still be in play for the birdie. Important, as you mentioned, Elias, to keep it in the fairway. But some of these guys might be looking to get that extra push. We see Jesse as well committing to the hyzer.
This is a little bit wide, but should make it all the way back to the fairway, as it just barely does. That bush that you see, that is kind of in the middle of the straight line that all of these guys are trying to go hyzer around of, that's a great aiming point. You want to be right off that bush off the tee and hopefully make your way back left, just around it. And Albert there as well. Just barely getting it back to the fairway. All of those are just in the perfect spot. Should be pretty simple second shots from there, especially with this tailwind.
Daniel here with some good speed out of the hand. Had that one flipped up to flat slightly longer and does navigate the width as well. The late overstable finish of that flight keeping him back in bounds. Some great distance pushed there by Daniel. Mauri now looking to beat these late trees.
And that's a nice looking angle there. Just needs to miss a couple of trees, as looks like unfortunately he hits the very last one of them. The line was looking perfect there, but ideally you would love to be flying over those trees, so possibly somebody that wants to put more power on the disc can get even past them, as we see Yes as well hitting one of the trees.
We see Albert here had a solid drive. I think going to be playing with more height here. And as he gets one over cleanly, great display of his power there, using the height and distance to completely remove those obstacles from the fairway. An ideal way to navigate this. And Daniel forced to sort of split these bushes here, given his position, but a lot of nose up, still more than enough distance to clear, as well as they have both positioned themselves ideally to attack the green on their next shots. Jesse here with an open look to the green, shaping nicely for the forehand hyzer. And he is able to find himself in the circle. A little bit of distance left on that, but a absolutely fine shot to give himself the birdie look. We see Mauri off the knee here.
Yeah, tricky position, but that's a nice angle, nice power he got on the disc. And he has made it all the way to the circle. What a great shot. Pretty impressive how much power he got on the disc, even from that kneeling position. And Daniel here with just a routine forehand approach.
Yeah, very smooth delivery to the green for Daniel, as he is just at bullseye's edge. Will be looking at his first birdie so far of this final round here on hole 3. We see Albert Also with a great position, able to throw a chip hyzer into the green. Having a soft chance to run it, he calls it to go in and he digs it, but bit of extra ground play to keep him honest. Going to leave him with a slight tester putt, although softly uphill. All of our players on the green and attacking for their birdies.
Still no easy putts here. You see that little bit of wind now coming from with a slight headwind from left to right. But Jesse luckily has a nice flat putt. Not the biggest amount of spin, but his putt is usually angle-wise not very much affected by the wind. And that's a good one there, right in the middle low.
A healthy putt for Jesse there. 2 down through the first 3 now. We move to Albert. Was really close to throwing it in, and despite coming in pretty perpendicular to the ground, found the roll, leaving him this little tester remaining. And a good correction for him as he secures his birdie here and goes 1 under for the round. He's on the scorecard here in round 3.
Yeah, that's a nice putt, especially after that miss on hole 2, but also many of the misses in round 2. That was exactly the range that Albert was having some struggles from, and good to see him make that one. And not many struggles expected from Mauri here, as he only got 5 meters left. And that's a good stabby putt in that headwind. You can see his putter just does not care about the wind, as he put so much spin and so much speed on it.
Absolutely, and setting a great pace. Mauri Villmann 3 down through 3 so far. Taking himself to 21 under and grabbing the momentum where he can here. We see Daniel find his first birdie of the round and a good bounce back after his bogey on hole 2. He evens out his round and still in a great position to keep pushing. Tied with Mauri now.
Yep, hopefully that is going to give Daniel some of the momentum that he lost on the previous hole. We're moving on to one of the most technical holes on the course. On another course this would definitely not be one of the most technical ones, but as this is a very open course, it definitely is. Only 100 meters in distance, we're playing slightly uphill, and the best shape for this fairway is absolutely a backhand overstable flex shot. You need to release something quite overstable on a slight anhyzer to make that fairway as wide as possible, and hopefully at the end of the flight avoid any sort of rollaways, as it is an extremely hard left to right sloped green.
As well as this initial gap to hit, a lot of elements required to find the birdie here. Mauri Villmann with a great drive sends it a little bit long off the ground play on the hill, but really shaping it beautifully, and you saw just how centered he was in that initial gap.
Very nice shot there, and putting a lot of pressure on the other guys. Jesse here with a backhand touch shot, which what we very rarely see from him, but that is a beautiful throw from Jesse. Just an unfortunate ground play at the end, although he's still in the circle, and that's, even though I called it unfortunate, that's actually quite common. If you land on the high side of the basket, almost every time you find yourself rolling down to that edge of circle range.
Albert finding a longer anhyzer portion to his flight, but fading back in time, curls up on the hillside. Another great shape there. And I think as the course designer intended, we will see Daniel now has momentum on his side after his great birdie on hole 3.
And Daniel here with a powerful flex shot. I believe even going with a mid-range, a Discmania Mutant there. A lot of power required to reach it with a Mutant, but that's a nice shot. He's gonna be a little bit short, but still well within putting distance. And that's a putt we have seen Daniel make many times, especially in round 2.
We have Jesse up first from just inside the circle, going uphill and brings down the birdie. Very nicely done. Jesse able to snag that one. This hole, one of the easiest so far in the first 4, averaging 2.73. We had 41% of the field find the birdie here in round 3. Definitely an attackable hole, although not without its complications. We see Albert at that range.
Important putt here, not only for the score, but also for his confidence. And that's gonna bring up the confidence and bring down the score. As Daniel actually is much closer than I thought originally. Just a 6-meter putt left here. Still no gimme with that elevated green. And tough footing here. Easy to pull it right with that back leg being lower than the front leg. Good concentration and a little weird looking release there. You can see Daniel even looking at his hand like what's happened there. But he's in the basket and not gonna lose any strokes to anybody on the card. Most importantly, to Mauri Villmann.
Mauri really setting the pace now at this point. First off the tee, gives us the CTP line of this card. Now left with this putt to continue. So far, a perfect final round. Matching Daniel and ensuring that he still has his share of the lead. We see the start frame here on hole 4 for our lead card.
Yeah, really well done there by the lead card, and these first 5 holes are really holes that you would love to birdie, at least to get 2, 3, 4, even 5 birdies throughout the first 5 holes. And after that, the course getting a little bit more difficult. Hole 5 here though, still very birdieable. It's one of the most satisfying shots you can find on the course. You're going way downhill with a huge flat to hyzer shot off the tee, setting yourself up with, depending on your drive's distance and angle, either a straight shot or a slight hyzer to this very well protected and sloped green. A lot of small trees to miss at the end of this approach. A lot of the times if you hit something at the end, you're left with that edge of the circle putt. That's a nice shot from Mauri though. Pushing it with full hyzer all the way through the shot. Getting a lot of distance in the meantime. And Jesse here. This is gonna be challenging the right side OB. But does end up in the fairway. Wow, what happened there? That looked like it was pushing to the right. I believe hitting one of the last branches on the right side of the initial gap.
We see Albert now not using the width as much out the initial gap, as this is really trucking though. A lot of speed, and he is also pushing the width of the available fairway, but some great distance to get up there. Is slightly closer to the tree line on the left. And we'll see Daniel now.
Yeah,
also with some great backhand power, and that's a low driven drive. Solid nose angle to push forwards. Late over stability.
That's a nice position
ideal
there.
Spot.
Yeah, we're gonna have a nice different set of angles to approach the green from Daniel there. Gonna have a bit of a left to right shot compared to Albert's straight or left to right shot. And Jesse here, he's gonna play Plinko with the trees. There's really no way to ensure this gets all the way through the trees. Couldn't quite see the disc land there. I wonder where it is. Probably within putting distance, but definitely not parked.
We will see Mauri now and his attempts to get inside the green. And he has done just that with a clean flight, even sends it a tad long, does not connect with anything and completes its way up there. Mauri will once again have a look for the birdie. So we see Daniel opting for the lower forehand hyzer, and he hits the gap really nicely. Even that late log for the backstop, absolutely parked from Daniel. As he really has a nice momentum now to his round, not giving up his share of the lead easily.
And Albert, this is actually one of the furthest drives I have ever seen on the hole. He got a lot of carry off that tee, but a little bit too far left, so he's gonna either have to shape a backhand hyzer or possibly even a forehand and hyzer shot to this green, since he's on that left side of the fairway. And even going to a knee to create more of an angle for that right to left flight.
And I believe also to open up the ceiling a little bit, going uphill with the low-hanging branches, dropping to the knee, affording him extra space on all sides. And a happy spectator there, enjoying the incredible action and the lovely weather. We see where Albert has gotten himself to and executes on another crucial putt. That confidence really soaring now, has 3 in a row. As he's looking well put together, all of the pieces of his game coming together in this final round. Mauri, another look at birdie here. So far playing pretty much perfectly. This is a tricky putt going downhill at such a severe slope. The drop off directly behind. You really need to hit chains if you want to commit to this.
Yeah, there's, even if you glide it way past the basket, there's even OB behind. But Mauri, why would he be scared of that OB, as he has put it in the middle? Perfect height control. They're so impressive, even with that low release spin putt, to get the height of the disc going so far downwards, even in that such a steep downhill. And Jesse here, looks like his approach actually made it inside the circle and was even able to stick it on top of the hill. A great birdie chance here, even after the errant drive.
Beautiful. Out of position off the tee, but in position for the birdie. And takes that one down. We see Daniel here simply tapping it in as our lead card completes a second star frame here consecutively on both holes 4 and 5. Quick work for these guys.
Now most of the easiest holes on the front nine are over, and we're moving on to a more difficult par 4 hill. Through 234 meters, you have to push your drive through this first gap on your first shot. Hopefully get something on a slight hyzer angle to move yourself left on this wide part of the fairway. Moving left is important because that will open up either the hyzer angle through the right side woods, or this forehand hyzer angle around the left side of the woods. With the forehand or actually with both of the shots, it's a little bit lucky at the end because you need to miss a couple of trees that are kind of in the middle of the line. But it's a difficult birdie, not a very difficult par, but in order to get that birdie, you really do need 2 great shots.
Mauri with a great forwards pushing flight here. And some great progress up the fairway. You see his comfort in the woods, playing in his home country. Very comfortable with this type of course, and a great execution from him there. Jesse looking to shape the turnover forehand. Quite a nice shape for the fairway, and as you see, the late stability to his flight as well. A great drive, and props to Jesse, who's performed great so far in this tournament on a course that predominantly shapes nicely for the right-handed backhand. Has been showing that he has a complete skill set and still shaping those forehands when he can.
And Albert here, what a nice flip-up shot. This has a lot of distance on it. Outdriving the 2 other guys by good 10-15 meters. And he's gonna have no more than a putter or mid-range shot to the basket from there. Let's see if Daniel can match that. A player with a lot of power on the backhand as well. And he has put it through the gap. He's fading more left than others, which is actually going to open up that forehand hyzer angle more than possibly the other players.
And despite having a more conservative angle, still getting some great distance from Daniel. We see Jesse here, now trying to find his way into this well-guarded green. Had a solid hyzer angle, but unable to pierce through the initial gap of the trees. And he'll be left with, I think, a jump putt approach from there. Very difficult to gauge the width and placement of the gaps from down here in the fairway. We see Mauri go higher and wider, catching some branches on his way. Does get it pin high, but not a perfect width, although a very good shot putting him in the circle. So he continues to try and find the continuation of his perfect round so far. Great performance, Daniel now.
Yeah, and he's even from such a far drive, he's going for this lower hyzer forehand. That's pushed a little bit too straight, but he's gonna have a good look from the edge of the circle there. Let's see if Albert goes for the low or the high sidearm. There's also a chance to go way over the top here. But nice medium height here, trying to get that right finish. And what a shot. He's gonna be inside the bullseye for the birdie there. Definitely gaining some strokes on at least somebody on the card. Most likely Jesse here, as he's just laying up from far edge of circle 2.
Yeah, great adjustment from Albert. We saw in comparison the other forehand entrances, he had the medium height. He got it just right. And we see Daniel now just outside and off the cage, was able to give it fairly confident bid. We see once again a slightly elevated basket, bringing in just that potential for doubt from those further putts. Mauri, though, in the circle. And a rare air ball from him in circle 1, although has a similar distance putt remaining now for his par, if not even a little bit further away. A very important moment here as he is tied for Daniel at 23 under. Jesse and Albert just behind them. Coming down the stretch of this last round, it will be very important. Any of these putts could be the difference here. Mauri from just outside the circle, and he's a tad low as he goes from birdie to bogey just like that.
And that is such a momentum killer. He was having a great start, a dream start to the round, going 5 under through 5. But just not to be this time. And he's gonna lose that lead if Daniel can make it from 5 meters here. Pretty important putt, and even though so early in the round you might not be thinking about the scores already, you can kind of feel that every time somebody on your card makes a mistake and you have the opportunity to get some strokes on them. No matter if you think about it or not, you're gonna feel the pressure a little bit more than normal.
And in general, even if you're not tracking scores directly, you do have a good feeling of how well you're performing relative to the card. Going into this final day with all of the scores very tight, I think momentum really playing a more significant factor here, where 1 or 2 stroke swings could be a defining moment, as we see a little bit of score separation just there. Albert finding the birdie, a par for Daniel and Jesse, and the bogey for Mauri on hole 6. Exciting action.
I just think the plastic is very premium.
I think it's the quality of plastic.
It's unlike any other plastic that you'll find in the industry.
It's something I can consistently trust.
You're gonna wanna put multiple discs in your bag.
You can only say so much where they have to eventually just try it themselves and see.
Hole 7 here. Tough par 3 to birdie. Not a tough one to get a par on, but to get inside the circle on this one, it takes a great straight fairway driver shot, especially in today's wind. In this round 3, we had a pretty significant headwind on this one, so players possibly throwing a bit of a faster disc. Some people were even going mid-range in the second round, but in this third round, I would expect everybody on the card to be going with a straight to stable fairway driver, There's also that OB right at the end, so another factor possibly pushing these players towards a more stable driver.
Yeah, great point regarding stability. You really do want something with some flip up to ensure the straight hyzer flight. We see Albert there finding that OB right that you touched on, Elias, and going out early. Par is pretty much out of play for Albert from that position. Jesse using some understability, but with the forehand, look at the flight, fades a little bit early and goes a touch long as he also finds that trouble with the late finish of the forehand flight towards the right side. That danger coming into play for the first 2 shots here.
And Daniel here making a great adjustment. Just look at that angle. He has absolutely crushed the disc, even going 10 to 15 meters long left. And while that is the best look for the birdie, and the only look for the birdie so far on the card, it's not close, and with that wind, gonna be a difficult putt to make. Mauri, good chance for him to possibly get that stroke back that he lost on the previous hole.
And it's an interesting moment to see how he executes here. Has found himself to about circle's edge, similar to where he missed the putt in the previous green. Will be a redeeming moment for him, and very interesting to see where his head's at, if he's aware he's still putting together a great round, or, as you mentioned, if his momentum has been stopped. We see Albert up first. This is his second throw, third stroke after OB, and he gets it up there, trying to give it even a soft bid, but with a nice nose-up angle, keeping it close as well.
And Daniel from circle 2. That's just a weak bid there. You can see he's super disappointed. The disc is not quite coming out of the hand right now, super clean. We saw the same on hole 4. And that's something that hasn't really been the case so far for Daniel. His putting has been super smooth. As Mauri also misses from just outside of circle 1.
Jesse here. And he comes back for a safe par. Hole 7 coming in statistically is a very balanced hole at 3.01. A similar percentage of birdies to bogeys, but really the majority of the field taking the par at around 60%. Well balanced and a good time in the 18 to give these players a long straight tunnel shot on what is more of an open layout. All of their skills are tested here, and short tap-ins remaining. We see the bogey for Albert and the par for the other 3.
And all of that technicality that we had on hole 7 is gone now. Hole 8, just a huge bomber of a par 4, 250 meters, playing into a right to left headwind today. Potentially the worst possible wind, especially for the drive, as you have to go with a high anhyzer turnover shot to get as much distance as possible. And once you have got all of that distance off the tee, you have a choice to either go this route that the drone is flying, which would be a forehand around the outside of all of these trees, but also a lot of players trying to challenge the straight gap with either a fairway gap, or a fairway driver, or even a mid-range if they're far enough down there. But really today, with that right-left headwind, super difficult to get any sort of good distance off this tee.
And Jesse laying down the high turnover roller as he'll curl out a touch early, not getting the complete stand-up he wants at the end of its roll, but able to shape into the fairway. Looks to be slightly on the left side. It might open up the forehand if it's an open look. We'll see Daniel now.
Yeah, Daniel going with something slightly more overstable, not making the same error as Jesse did, but still doesn't get the fade back. You can just see how strong that right to left headwind is, pushing that anhyzer shot down, not allowing for the full flex.
Similar looking line from Mauri there. As you mentioned, once you get the tip of the disc, that wing turning right into the wind, it will just get smashed down, as we are seeing that from all of these drives. Albert, potentially able to make the adjustment with the wind read, has gone with significantly more stability and a touch of hyzer on his release. As a result, you see that right to left, pushing his disc out to the left side, catching the flight plate, doesn't get the turn held over. We see very different result from an attempted adjustment for him compared to the other three drives, and this is what he's left with now.
Tough position, all about getting a lot of distance, even with this shot, having to go over those bushes. Luckily the fairway is very wide after you get over the bushes, and Albert there gonna be on the grass with a pretty routine approach for the par, so good scramble there from that position. And next up, Jesse. A lot of distance left to the green. He needs to absolutely smash this one if he wants to be inside the circle here. It looks to be a little bit short.
We see Mauri looking to shape the big forehand entrance, but also a lot of distance remaining on this. And he has found it, finds his way around the corner, and has a look from that similar distance that he's been on the green, about 8 to 12 meters, I think just outside the circle for Mauri. And Daniel actually opting for the left to right shape, but with the backhand to try and access that back door. He too will leave himself with a long putt. We see Albert now in his view of the green.
Pretty routine shot here. Gotta watch out for that left to right headwind now from this angle. And almost skipping it in for the birdie. What a nice control there from Albert. And next up, Daniel. This is actually a surprisingly tricky approach with that low ceiling. Gotta get it down under the branches, and he has put too much anhyzer on the disc. That is gonna leave a tester putt.
I think he could have considered dropping to a knee to try and open up the ceiling, but you saw he had sort of a lunging movement to the left to open up the width. Jesse able to give it a nice chance there. We saw the wind play some tricks on his putter. He nestles up. This is Mauri now. Has an opportunity for his birdie from outside the circle. And it's a confident bid. That looks like a healthy putting stroke. Really no hesitation there. And just a little bit high on the delivery. Daniel for par.
Oh no, and that is just tough to watch. Daniel, a player who has been putting great throughout the tournament, but just having some release issues here. Another bit of a weak looking release, not quite getting the spin and the power on the disc. And he's gonna lose that one stroke lead that he had going into this hole. And Daniel will be tied with both Jesse and Mauri for the first position. Unfortunate to see, but very good for our coverage here, as we're gonna have a three-way tie at the top, and Albert only one stroke back going into the 9th hole.
So many competitors still in play for every position remaining, keeping it exciting here. What do we have on hole 9, Elias?
Hole 9 here. It's another one of these short par 3s that we have only seen one of on the front 9 so far. This time 100 meters, but playing downhill. There's really two choices on this hole. You can either go for the straight shot. It's a perfectly straight shot with either a putter or a slow mid-range. Or we have seen multiple players going for that right side spike hyzer that kind of plays with a few branches, but most likely, almost every time, getting down to the green safely and leaving yourself with a good putt from inside the circle.
Jesse here going for the forehand hyzer flip. Had a nice bit of swirly base plastic in his hand, and he hits the tunnel nicely. Finds a fade a touch short, but is inside the circle, leaving him about 8 or 9 meters for his birdie. You'll see Mauri opting for that high and wide hyzer as he looks to the skies and now to the green.
And unfortunately has ended up OB on the right side. It's playing as an island hole and he will have to go to the drop zone. That's an unfortunate result, but something that can pretty easily happen with the hyzer as you're playing with a lot of those high trees and high branches. But Albert able to make the adjustment going fully over the high trees, never bringing any luck factor into play, and he's right out of the bullseye there.
Yeah, it's an interesting choice of risk mitigation. The spike hyzer going over OB the whole way, but if you can clear them like Daniel did, keeps it a bit inside, then you're removing a lot of elements from play, although the straight line allowing you to fly through inbounds requires a little bit more touch than the one angle shot. So we see what Mauri is left with from the drop zone now for his par save. And just a little bit low the whole way. That low release, not quite getting the nose up and the height required. We see Jesse now for his birdie.
A huge putt here. Not in distance, but for momentum, and that is right in the middle. Jesse's putt is looking pretty good on this final round. And he has shot a very competitive 5 under front 9. Not much better you can really hope for, especially in these windy conditions, as the course is playing significantly more difficult than, for example, in the second round.
And Daniel able to translate that there, finding his birdie to go 2 under through the front 9. We see Jesse, the only one on our lead card, maintaining a bogey-free start to this final day. Daniel there with 4 birdies, but 2 bogeys, still under par and still very much in contention, tied with Jesse. And Albert here also put together a pretty solid performance, finding himself at 4 under with only a single bogey. Mauri, unfortunately, will drop back to 21 under. 1 stroke behind Albert, who is 1 stroke behind Daniel and Jesse, with only 9 holes remaining.
That's gonna be it for the front 9. A lot of exciting things happening there, and Mauri kind of having a slow end to the front 9, as it is Jesse and Daniel tied for that leading spot. Albert only 1 stroke back, and Mauri only 1 stroke back of that. After that, it's a bit of a gap between some familiar European players. We got Hjalte Jensen, Pekka Hyvönen, Joona Heinänen. Also important for this event to keep in mind, it's another USDGC qualifier, so not only the win but also the spots for USDGC, very important in this one.
The biggest stakes in Europe here at the PDGA Euro Tour. We appreciate you joining us for this coverage, and we hope you join us for the remaining final 9 to determine who takes down not only the championship but the USDGC, the podium spots. Make sure to join us there, and thanks for joining us today here.